Hey guys, welcome back to Libby's Lounge, Patreon edition, where we are recording the unofficial audiobook of the Assassin's Alliance. We're on chapter 33. Let's dive in. Chapter 33. Maureen. Maureen thought she was good at waiting, but for a whole month, Francis's orders were to wait and remain radio silent. She had never hated Francis as much as she did now. They'd missed Krista's funeral, and she hadn't had a chance to talk to Andrew at all. She was going stir-crazy. Her stomach rolled with anxiety. Jeffrey said he'd be back in about a month. That should be any day now. It doesn't make sense, Maureen said for the 457th time since they'd been grounded. No follow-up with Zach or Rosemary. No clue what Jeffrey told Francis. Nothing. The clicking from Seamus typing on the laptop stopped. You don't like being sidelined? He asked from the kitchen table. I think you should do whatever hacking you do and get us some information, or at least let everyone know we're alive. That's not... He sighed. I can't get access to the Legacy servers. What about Legacy Inc.? She asked, sitting up, a wave of nausea coming over her. Being cooped up was making her ill. Or maybe it was a new side effect of the sin. She'd felt off ever since Jeffrey dosed her. No one had been double-dosed before, and she wished she could reach out to Charlie and find out what the hell was going on. Pushing past the urge to puke, she got to her feet and moved behind him. Don't you have a way to contact Eileen off online? Off online? He laughed. You want me to break Legacy laws so you can what? Say hello to Andrew? Welcome to the boring side of the Legacy. We have orders. We wait. She let out an exasperated groan. She wanted to tell him she didn't give a damn about the laws, that this was stupid. They were not being utilized, and that... She paused her thoughts. That was what Rosemary had said they were. Underutilized. Maybe she wasn't wrong. Would you like to spar again? He closed the laptop and rolled his neck. Not really, she admitted. I'm kind of just... tired. Stagnation will do that. He pushed the chair back and stood. How's the shoulder? Stiff, she admitted. No offense, but I wish Eileen was here. Me too, he said with a laugh. Let's go for a run. They only made it half a mile before Maureen puked. The nausea she'd been fighting off all morning getting the best of her. You good? Seamus asked, doubling back to check on her. Yeah, she said, wiping the back of her hand across her mouth, the sour taste still lingering. Stomach's been off this morning. You probably caught a bug or something. Head home. I'll get Miles in for both of us. She nodded and watched him take off. Another wave of nausea hit, and she puked again. Fuck this. She was going home and back to bed. Maybe she would sleep until Jeffrey decided to show back up. By the time she got home, Maureen was convinced she had the flu. She puked 5 more times, and pure exhaustion settled into her bones. She downed a glass of water that didn't want to stay down and dropped onto the couch, the stairs seeming like too much of an effort, and pulled the blanket over her. Movement from above startled her, and before she let out a scream, a cloth bag dropped over her face. She tried not to breathe in, knowing it was a futile effort, and clawed at the hands holding her down until her line of consciousness went dark. She'd like to say she had no idea where she was when she awoke, but Maureen recognized the white-tiled floors of Rosemary's compound. At least the bed they dropped her onto was comfortable. There she is. Maureen whipped around, heart pounding, as she came face to face with Elijah. He sat in an armchair near the wall. He lowered the book he'd been reading, and she glanced down, glad to see she still wore her running clothes. The bruises on her back had mostly healed, but she didn't need anyone questioning them. She remained silent, unsure what to say. Was this a friendly visit? Had Francis shown his hand and this was a hostage situation? She laughed at herself. What's so amusing? I was trying to figure out if this was a friendly visit or not. And then I realized, you kidnapped me, so I'm going to go with not. The type of visit is up to you and Mr. McGuire, he said, crossing his knees and sitting back. Seamus is here? He will be. Maureen didn't know if that was a good thing or not. On one hand, she didn't want to be here alone. On the other, she didn't see how this could end well. What is this about? She asked. You know, I've really enjoyed working with you these last few years, he said, ignoring her question. Me too. Maureen adjusted into a cross-legged position on the bed, unsure of where this was going, but she was willing to play along. We were making great strides on Sin. Has Charlie... But you've been holding back on me. His face darkened, and her words jammed into her throat. What do you mean? In the last 5 years, have I ever given you a reason not to trust me? He asked. Not dislike me. I know how you feel about me. But have I ever given you a reason not to trust me? Maureen opened her mouth to answer and then snapped it closed, running his question back in her head. He hadn't, and she shook her head in response. Then why am I finding out about your ability to manipulate sin from someone else? Do you know the things we could have done with that? How many people may have been lying to us? She swallowed back, the vomit begging to come up, and nodded, not missing his use of past tense. Francis asked me. Elijah scoffed and uncrossed his legs, leaning forward. Of course, the high and mighty great senior assassin. His rank has nothing to do with it, Maureen said. He saved me when I needed saving. I didn't even know what senior assassin meant. He expected nothing from me. He expected everything, Elijah spat. And you just gave it to him. The contempt dripped off his words. The perfect puppet. Doesn't matter now. His words hit hard, and she tried not to show him. Rosemary had called them puppets, too. Was that what Elijah thought of them all? A knock on the door interrupted them, and Elijah straightened up. Come in. The door swung open, and it took several seconds for Maureen to comprehend what she was seeing. Seamus was shoved into the room, followed by Jeffrey. No troubles? Elijah asked. Her heart sank to the floor, Seamus looking from her to Elijah, the realization setting in. No, sir, Jeffrey answered. Easy as pie. The words triggered a feeling Maureen had never felt before, an unbridled, raw rage. She launched herself off the bed, catching Jeffrey off guard. He stumbled back and spun them, slamming her face into the concrete wall, a knife pressed against her throat. You are going to be a problem, he said in her ear. I don't like problems. And you are a filthy traitor, she ground out. He pressed the knife deeper, and Maureen's glare dared him to do it, because if he didn't, she was going to kill him. Maybe not today, but she would be the one to end him. The thought ripped through her, and she was never more sure of anything in her life. Let her go, Elijah said. Maureen held his stare, her hatred surpassing anything she'd felt before. The hatred she felt for her father felt childish compared to this. She'd trusted this man. She'd undergone sin to prove her loyalty to him and Francis, and the violation of that encounter made her skin crawl. He drew the knife back, the blade slicing as it went, and she sucked in a breath, fingers going to the cut. Now that you're both here, I have a few items to get in order. Get comfortable. Bathroom's through that door. Elijah pointed to the corner of the room. And I understand you don't mind sharing a bed. Maureen's face heated as he followed Jeffrey out. Her heart beat in her ears, and she stared at the closed door. How long had he been working for Elijah? Was Francis dead? How hard could it be to kill a Reaper? Seamus's hand grabbed her shoulder, and she jumped. Sorry, he said. Let me see that. It's fine. She wiped the blood on her pants and did a visual check on him, not finding anything critical. Are you okay? I'm fine. Would you have a death wish? Jeffrey could have killed you. As quickly as her rage had come, it left, leaving a deep emptiness in its wake. She dropped down on the queen bed, burying her head in her hands. Her mother had been right. Do you think he's dead? She asked. He took a seat beside her, shaking his head. No. Elijah is still operating within the laws. There's still hope. The nauseating smell of eggs and bacon pulled Maureen from sleep. She rolled out of the bed, leapt over Seamus sleeping on the floor, and barely made it to the toilet. It was the 5th morning since they arrived at Rosemary's compound, and each had started like this. She puked until nothing but dry heaves rocked her, and she laid her body shaking on the cool bathroom floor. She couldn't remember the last time she'd been this sick. Maybe when she was a teen? If this was a new after effect of sin, it fucking sucked. The door opened, and she tilted her head up to find Rosemary standing in the doorway with a tray of food. She didn't even have the energy to be mad at her as a scent wafted forward, forcing Maureen to cover her nose. Get that away from me, she said. Seamus appeared behind Rosemary and pulled her from the room, but the smell lingered, and Maureen groaned, fighting off the urge to puke again. There was nothing left for her to puke. Seamus reappeared, light fingers brushing the hair from her face. He's summoning us for a meeting. He can meet me here, she said, closing her eyes. I don't think that will fly. She could hear the smile in his voice. Come on. He reached under her arms and pulled her to her feet. Shower time. A shower helped, although she turned away from the tray of food left for her to eat. The sight of Jeffrey outside their door would have stolen her appetite anyways. Been demoted to hall monitor? Maureen asked. Executioner in waiting, he said, wiping the smile off her face. He led them to the kitchen, which was thankfully clear of food. The large open room sported a wall of windows overlooking the ocean. A table long enough to seat 12 took up the space beside the windows, and there was a breakfast bar, which sectioned off the enormous working kitchen. Sleep well? Elijah asked from the head of the table. Maureen didn't answer, taking in the room. There were knives on the counter and a glass door that blended into the windows. You can run, Elijah said, clocking her intentions. You'll be dead before you leave the property. Speaking of dead, Maureen said, pulling herself together. She hadn't earned Elijah's trust by being timid. He valued directness, confidence, risk takers. She strode toward the table and took the seat beside him. Did you kill him? I've always appreciated your no-nonsense persona, much more than your gooey-eyed, lovesick puppy one. Seamus took the seat beside her, but she didn't look at him. I've never been a lovesick puppy, Maureen countered. Is he dead? No, he said, and as long as you two cooperate, he may live a long, prosperous life. She could feel Seamus's eyes on her, but she kept her attention on Elijah. Cooperate how? Keep quiet about Legacy Inc. and other transgressions, Elijah said, waving his hand as if these transgressions were a fruit fly and not treason. Maureen opened her mouth to protest, but he cut her off. For now. She glanced over at Jeffrey, hatred stirring deep in her gut again. She couldn't lie to Francis about that. She could lie to Elijah about lying to Francis about that. As a good faith gesture, Elijah continued, I'm sending Seamus home. No, Seamus said, leaning forward on the table. I'll stay. Send Maureen. Oh, we have some discussions that are long overdue. And since she's the only functioning human who has come out sane the other side of a second sin trip. He raised his eyebrows in explanation, and Maureen's gut flipped. Dose me then, Seamus offered. Maureen whipped around, horror on her face. Absolutely not. She looked back at Elijah. No. I agree with Miss McCall, although quite the chivalrous act. You get to go home. And how are you so sure I'll keep my mouth shut? Seamus, Maureen hissed. One of them was getting to leave. One of them was going to be able to let the team know they were okay. Make sure Andrew was okay. Why couldn't he just take the win? Because Maureen's life rests solely in your hands. No harm will come to her as long as you behave yourself. And if you utter a single word, I'll kill her. There's no malice in his words, and that should scare her, but instead a calmness settled over her. It was simply a business arrangement, and she a pawn in his bigger game of chess. He'll stay quiet, Maureen assured and looked at Seamus. His blue eyes begged her to do or say something different, but it was already done. No amount of fighting and arguing was going to change Elijah's mind. It wouldn't have changed hers if their positions were swapped. Good. Jeffrey will be escorting you home and keeping a close watch, Elijah said, dismissing Seamus. Mo, he breathed. Concern laced through the words, and he grabbed her hand. She forced the lump of emotion trying to choke her back down. I'll be fine, she said, failing to fill the words with confidence, and he squeezed her hand. Make sure Andrew's okay. He nodded and looked up at Elijah. What do I tell my team? That Maureen's role on mission has been extended. However, your usefulness has run dry. It's already been cleared with Francis, so there's no confusion. Maureen swallowed hard. As long as Francis was kept in the dark, there'd be no way to save her. But if Elijah just wanted to talk about sin, then she should be safe. She tried to give Seamus a comforting smile. It'll be fine. Keep telling yourself that, Jeffrey said, dropping his hand on Seamus's shoulder. Seamus scoffed and pushed himself up. I can fucking walk, he snapped, pulling his arm away and turning back to Elijah. I'll keep my mouth shut, but if you break this deal, you will regret it. A heavy ball of lead sat in Maureen's chest as she sat back in her chair, keeping her eyes forward. The door snapped closed and a thick silence dropped over the two of them. Her stomach rolled again, and she groaned, pushing herself up. She spied the garbage in the kitchen and just barely made it. What are you, pregnant? Elijah said with a laugh. She snapped her eyes over to him. That was not funny. Pregnant? She couldn't be. This was the ramifications of a second sin trip, or the stomach flu. There was no way she could be. They took precautions. She puked again. Her arms shook as they braced against the garbage can. It'd been over a month since she and Andrew had sex, but she had taken antibiotics for the gunshot wound just a few days later, and then she and Seamus had. She closed her eyes and dropped her head forward, the stretch of the back of her neck distracting her from the sick feeling filling her that had nothing to do with vomiting. You're fucking kidding me, he said, disappointment tracing through his words. A wave of shame passed over her. It reminded her of their time spent working together in the lab and interrogation. She hated him, but she still wanted to impress him. He stood, and she laid her cheek against her forearm as he approached. The disappointment disappeared, replaced by a cold look in his eyes. Don't worry. We can take care of that. You're not the first nor last asset to befall nature's cruel gifts. Cruel gifts. The word tore at her heart, and Aunt June flashed into her mind. She'd taken Maureen in because she couldn't have kids of her own. It seemed more like a cruel joke. Elijah, no. His implication drove Maureen to her feet, her legs almost not supporting her, and she grabbed onto the counter. She didn't even know if she was pregnant. But even with the suggestion, a protective urge pulsed through her. This was a legacy heir. Or could be. Fuck. She couldn't be pregnant. I mean, we don't even know if I am. This could be the after effect of sin. He frowned. Would it be Andrew's or Seamus's? Fuck Rosemary for telling him. Elijah would use this to further manipulate Seamus, to destroy the team. Even if it was Andrew's, the damage Elijah could inflict with what he knew would be irreparable. I don't know, she whispered. Good. This will give Seamus even more reason to follow my orders. No! She shook her head and closed a few feet between them. Please, he can't know, she pleaded. No one can know. Convincing Seamus to forget a one-night stand they couldn't remember was easy. Telling him he might be a father from that? She could see the way the team would splinter, the betrayal on Eileen's face, her mother's smug look haunting her dreams, Andrew's broken expression. She couldn't do that to them. With a deep breath, she took a step back. I mean, if I even am. I would bet my left testicle you're pregnant, Elijah said, and the smile that spread across his face instilled a healthy dose of fear. What is it worth to you to keep this quiet? And that is the end of chapter 33. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. I absolutely loved this chapter. I know I say that about every chapter, but it's true. Or they wouldn't have ended up in the book. This one was fun, bringing in Jeffrey as my my turncoat. He wasn't at first. At first, he was a good guy. But during rewrites, I realized I needed somebody close to Francis that Elijah could manipulate. And as much as I love Jeffrey's character, he was in the perfect position to be what we needed to turn the tables. So that's what I have for you. We're going to go right into chapter 34. I will see you guys there.